Hello, welcome to another Live with Crimes, Lies, and Alibis. My name is Nicole, and I am here to talk about a case that's very close to my heart. This content is for educational purposes only, has adult content, and is for adults only. Viewer discretion is advised. Growing up in rural Ohio had its ups and downs. On one hand, it made seeing friends from school a little harder. It also meant that you could be a latchkey kid and not really have to worry about someone being there who wasn't supposed to be. You know. When I was young, I loved doing my homework and reading books outside when the weather was good. The breeze sometimes made it challenging, but there was something about being one with nature while I laid there in the grass that calmed my soul. One summer, I was reading a novel from the public library under my favorite farmer Christmas tree that my parents had replanted. It was huge and provided the perfect shady place. I looked up and saw the cutest bunny that was eyeing me suspiciously, but then seeing that I was of no danger to it, laid there on the ground and started snoozing. It didn't move as I continued to turn the pages. When my book was finished, I moved to get up and the bunny ran away, but I enjoyed its company while it lasted. I also thought that fireflies were magic when I was little. I would catch them in a jar, turn that jar upside down. I would put that upside down jar on the railing of my house and excitedly wait until morning because little me was absolutely convinced that fireflies only existed at night. Every morning when I'd round that corner towards the back of my house, the jars would be on the ground, tipped over, and the fireflies gone. Now looking back, it was probably one of our many barn cats, but little me believed in magic. When I got a bit older, I was allowed to ride my bike a lot of places. I'd find myself visiting somewhat local friends, or even riding the 5 miles into town and getting ice cream and more library books. About this time, I would also walk home from soccer games and practices. Life for me was mostly good. Young me had absolutely zero clue what dangers possibly lurked around the corner. I recognized my privilege of holding on to the innocence that comes with a complete family of parents who loved me and older siblings who were a pain, but the best kind of pains. For struggling to believe in magic as an adult, my childhood was pretty magical. And now to the point of my story. Now, this is going to sound kind of roboty because I am reading from a blog that I wrote about 6 months ago. There is a purpose to this blog. I will get to it as it develops. Sierah Joughin was born February 11th, 1996 in Sylvania, Ohio to her parents, Sheila Valek and Tom Joughin. She had 4 siblings, Kayla, Ava, Hunter, and Carson. Sierra was just a young woman enjoying her life. She graduated from Evergreen High School June 2014 in Metamora, Ohio, and was part of the National Honor Society. She was known to be vibrant, funny, and extremely likable by everyone she knew. She had a very close group of friends who she maintained since childhood, and a special bond with her family members. Some people can barely scrape together one parent, but Sierra had 2 blended families. Even after her parents' divorce, and she was part of so many vacations and activities with her Aunt Tara and Uncle Howard Ice's little family. They were basically like another set of parents to her. In addition to all of that love, she had a very close bond with her grandparents as well. She was confident in all of her own abilities, but also very kind to those that she encountered. Let's pull up this one. Sierra attended college at the University of Toledo and was looking forward to starting her junior year studying business. She was a member of the fraternity Alpha Kappa Psi. She played volleyball in high school and enjoyed intramural volleyball at the UT campus. Sierra also loved riding horses, running, traveling. She seemed to have it all. During the summer, she disappeared. Sierra was part of an internship at her uncle's metal stamping business, Ice Industries, where she hoped to work after graduation in the human resources department. Family and friends stated that Sierra was always appreciative of every opportunity she was given and took great pride in giving every task her all. Josh Kolansky was Sierra's longtime boyfriend that she began dating in middle school. He lived about 7 miles away from her. They both graduated together and were among classmates on the homecoming court senior year. They had talked about spending their lives together and marriage, but she wanted to wait until she graduated from college. Every milestone a person can have while they are growing up, Josh and Sierra did it together. Their relationship grew stronger and stronger as time passed. They enjoyed many activities together, such as skiing, hiking, and skydiving. Sierra was living with her grandparents for the summer, who lived down the street from her mother, but she was planning to move in with her aunt and uncle in the fall when school resumed again. On the day of her disappearance, Sierra spent some time at Josh's house because she had just gotten home from being on vacation and wanted to see him. She had recently purchased a bicycle at a garage sale that she was excited about and decided to ride it to Josh's house. On the return trip home, Josh rode with her on his own motorcycle until she told him it was okay to go back because she was close to her own home in Metamora. They stopped at County Road 6. She gave him a kiss, and he told her to text him. This was approximately 6:45 p.m. on July 19th. Josh said, "I remember exactly what I said. I kissed her, I told her that I loved her, and to text me when she got home." After they parted ways, Josh went to spend a little time with some of his friends. However, that evening, around 9 p.m., Sierra's mom, Sheila, arrived at the house where she found that Sierra's bedroom light was off. It was unlike her to not be home. At about 10 p.m., Josh called Sheila asking if she had spoken to Sierra because he had sent several text messages that went unanswered. When Sheila said that she had not, they both became worried. When trying to call Sierra, the phone went right to voicemail. Sheila and Josh started driving around to see if they could spot Sierra, thinking that maybe she had been hit or had otherwise fallen off of her bicycle. When finding nothing, Sheila called the police. If Sierra had intended to be somewhere else for the night, she would have told someone. Her lack of communication was extremely abnormal. Darkness in the country is a different kind of dark. Other than reflective paint on the roads, there aren't any streetlights. Often there aren't even streetlights at intersections, so when the corn is tall and the night is still, those roads go on for miles. You can only see what your headlights illuminate. You can barely see the peppering of houses that are scattered, and you are usually set back a decent distance from the road, until you are practically missing the driveway before you see them. So searching for Sierra in the dark when they couldn't get a hold of her on the phone was probably terrifying. I have a little kind of video that I want to share. This is what it looks like driving at night in the country of Ohio. This isn't in Ohio. This is just what you would expect trying to find someone in the dark. This is what it's like. When there's no other traffic, there's no street lights, there's nothing. This is it. It's blackness. So this is what they would have experienced trying to find her. Go back to this one. Family and friends formed a search party, and word was spreading fast. Actually, missing Sierah Joughin. Rumors were flying outside of the community as well, automatically casting suspicion at Josh. People were accusing him of lying about their last moments together. These accusations increased when her purple bicycle was found by a sheriff's deputy in a cornfield a half a mile away from her home. There was blood on the handlebars. Deputies found the bike because they spotted broken stalks of corn that seemed suspicious. And I have those photos here. There is her bicycle. That was after they pulled it out of the corn. Those were tracks that were found in the dirt. That same evening, authorities searched the cornfield and found multiple clues, including Sierra's sunglasses, a screwdriver, a sock. There's that bike again. Blood, her sock, and a fuse box. Men's sunglasses, motorcycle tracks, and evidence of a struggle indicated by broken corn stalks and corn stalks with streaks of blood on them, per ABC News. With the assistance of the FBI, authorities made efforts to track Sierra using her Fitbit watch tracker and smartphone. Kind of giving you guys some previews here. Her cell phone returned a signal several miles from where her bicycle was located, but this did not produce her location. Rewards ranging from where her bicycle was located, rewards ranging from $25,000 to $100,000 were offered for any information leading to her safe recovery. Everyone wanted Sierra home. Police notified the FBI seeking help almost right away. They were not too proud to ask for additional law enforcement to strengthen their search. Later, investigators acquired a blood-stained motorcycle helmet from a farmer who located it on the side of the road the night of Sierra's disappearance near his field. Accusations against Josh continued to mount, though police were not convinced that he was part of any foul play, considering he was an absolute mess. They questioned him, searching his home, and spoke to his alibi anyway to formally rule him out as a suspect. This led police to question James Worley, who lived on the same street as Sierra with her mother. Or he lived with his mother. A longtime friend of Worley described his relationship with his mother as codependent and dysfunctional. Worley is not a good character. He already had a history with local law enforcement. And this is why you see this picture. Robin Gardner was 26 years old on July 4th, 1990, when she was abducted by James Worley. She was riding her bicycle in White House, Ohio, when a man in a pickup truck passed by her. She did not give him a second glance and continued on her path. Suddenly, that same pickup collided into her, sending her into the ditch. When Robin stood up, the driver of the pickup truck, later identified as Worley, asked her if she was all right. Robin testified that she put her defenses down and told him that she thought she was okay. Worley then hit Robin on the back of her head with a hammer and put her into a stranglehold. He then held a screwdriver to her neck, ordered her to get inside his truck, or he was going to kill her. He attempted to handcuff Robin behind her back, but he was only able to secure one on her right wrist. She kept her wits about her and was able to slip out of the driver's side of his truck that he left open as he was closing the passenger door. Mr. Worley is not very smart, thankfully, in this case. Before he was able to grab her again, Robin was able to flag down a passing motorcyclist, screaming that he was trying to kill her. Worley told the motorcyclist to not listen to her, that she was crazy. He contended that Robin had caused the crash when she cut in front of him with her bicycle. The motorcyclist took Robin home. Thankfully, that person stopped, where she called the police and identified her attacker. The police were unable to remove the handcuff that was around her wrist with the keys they had available. Robin has sustained a hairline fracture and a concussion from the hammer blow. He also had slit her leg with a screwdriver. Worley did not resist arrest, but was taken in and formally charged for an attempted abduction. After a short trial, Worley was then convicted of abduction charges and sentenced 4 to 10 years in prison with the possibility of parole. He served 3 years for the crime before he was released early by his own petition, free to live unmonitored and no probation. Oops. This one. I guess we'll just do this. In 1996, Claudia, known as Sissy Tinsley, was 24, a mother of 3, and a sex worker in North Toledo. Sissy, she was my big sister, Chris Tinsley said. I was her little brother. I mean, we always had a close relationship. He stated that the family was unaware Claudia was working as a prostitute, but they did know she lived a dangerous life using drugs and dancing in strip clubs in Detroit. She did what she could to get by. Their mother feared that her lifestyle was dangerous, and then she disappeared. Who was last known person to see Claudia? That's right, James Worley. On the night of September 8th, 1996, she was seen at the German-American Festival. According to Toledo Police Detective William Goodlett, he, Worley, said he picked her up somewhere around the Summit and Cherry Street area. She got in the car, they made several stops, and drove around for a little while. After that, Worley stated that he took her to her mother's house. Goodlett reported that according to Worley, when he was questioned, she said, well, come on in. And then, so I went with her, and her mom's there, and there was some kids, and maybe there were a couple of adults. We were there for maybe no more than 10 minutes or so, and we left. It was at that point in time, as you read, that she, the mother, wrote down my license plate number, and that's how I got involved in this whole thing. Why would he say that? Why would her mother decide out of the blue for no reason to write down a license plate if everything was fine? How many people had Claudia brought to the house, and why then, of all times, did her mother decide that this was something she needed to do? How did she know, hey, I should write the plate down that my daughter's riding around with this guy in? For police, the fact that Claudia felt compelled to tell her mother to write down the plate number is meaningful if that's what happened. It sounds like it wasn't typical at all that she'd have some sort of suspicion. Her mother did ask her, don't go with this guy. Maybe she gave it to her mom to calm her mind. The investigators, were able to talk to witnesses who saw Worley and Claudia together. Goodlett said Worley was driving a 1995 Chevy Beretta on September 8th with the same license plate number Claudia asked her mother to write down. The plate was registered to a leasing company, and that's how they were able to trace it to Worley. Claudia's family had no way of knowing for certain that this would be the last time they would see her alive. I don't know if my sister had told her that she had a bad feeling or my mom had a bad feeling, but she pretty much begged her to not get in his car. Begged her to not go, said Chris Tinsley. She watched her get in the car and drive off, and that's the last thing she had in her mind was Claudia leaving, and Mom had a feeling she was never going to see her again. And Claudia Tinsley was never seen again, and she is now among the cold case files in the vaults of the Toledo Police Department. Worley was their only lead as the last known person to see her alive, but without more evidence, he could not be formally charged. Their hands were, for lack of a better phrase, completely tied. In 2011, police issued a search warrant of Worley's property over the connection of Claudia's disappearance. Authorities found nothing connecting him to Claudia, but they did find marijuana plants, firearms, and other weapons. He was convicted of cultivating those marijuana plants and possessing weapons while on disability, both felonies at the time. He was released 2 years later in 2002, again after petitioning for early release. After his second release from prison, he started a small business fixing vehicles at his residence and was licensed as a trailer transporter. Unfortunately, Claudia's mother died of cancer in 2018 without ever finding her daughter, who would have been 52 years old on May 22nd, 2024, which is coincidentally my birthday. Interesting. So when police started to put the connection between Worley's well-known farmhouse and Sierra's family home, they knew immediately that he was a person of interest. With his first victim being an attempted abduction, who was on her bicycle that he ran off the road with his vehicle, and suspicions that he was involved in Claudia's disappearance, they knew that time was of the utmost importance. Each minute they spent looking for Sierra meant another minute that could be her last. This guy's fun, and I mean that in the most sarcastic way. The most sarcastic way. Because there is actually an audio available from an officer's device that I may put up at a later time. Worley can be heard saying, "So you got some suspicions for something here. So if you're going to tell me that this is all under the guise of checking every household and you're not here for any particular reason." So he's already kind of like, if you're not here for any reason, he's being harassed. Officer, there's a young lady missing. Worley, listen, I'm not out there killing chicks, dude. Like, whoa. slow your roll there, Tiger. We're just looking for a girl. Have you seen her? Like, automatically, he's, hey, it's not me, man. I'm not out here killing chicks. No one said anybody was dead. There's a young lady missing. She's missing. No one said anything about her being dead. So who is James Worley? James Dean Worley was born April 8th, 1959 in Tacoma, Washington, to Florence and James Julius Worley. He has one brother and one sister who are unnamed. His father was an officer in the United States Army. When Worley was 5 years old, his father's alcoholism became a problem. Filing for divorce, Florence moved Worley back to her home in Metamora, Ohio, and remarried. He, like Sierra, went to Evergreen Elementary School, and then eventually graduated from Evergreen High School in 1978. He had a very poor academic standing, barely graduating with a 1.93 GPA and an IQ of about 97. Worley had stated that he started using and selling marijuana at 14 years old. Could anyone in his graduating class ever imagine that he was capable of attempting to abduct a woman 12 years later? Like, can you imagine going to school with that guy in a very tiny community and being like, okay, well, he didn't have his foot over most likely to succeed. That's for sure. Probably not even class clown. He was probably a dick. But anyway, after graduation, Worley struggled to hold down steady employment. He worked many odd jobs in and around the Toledo area, often helping out at county fairs during the summer leading up to the abduction attempt in 1990. Of course, he worked at county fairs. Not so fun fact, my brother used to work in the parts department at the local car dealership close to Worley's home. There were a few times he interacted with Worley, who was there to pick up the parts that he had ordered. My brother said that the guy was odd, but had no way of knowing the evil that lurked inside him. But Worley lived just under 2 miles away from Sierra. When law enforcement officers stopped at his home to talk to him, he told them that his motorcycle had broken down in the area and that he had lost some items of the same description as those at the crime scene. He also stated that he had discovered 2 bicycles in the corn, one of which he took, and that it would have his fingerprints on it. Worley had mentioned details that had not been yet made public. Of course he did. Detectives didn't let him in on any of those details either, meaning that he offered them up unprompted. They also discovered that Worley had a court-mandated therapist for a few sessions after his release in the 90s. After his previous conviction for nearly abducting Robin, he told his therapist that he, quote, learned from each abduction what he had done, what he could do, and the next one he was going to bury. In an audio during the first round of questioning, Worley had also disclosed that he did not have any current relationships, but was trying to get one started online through a dating service. She had been out there, and guess what? She went home alive. Well, isn't that a ringing endorsement? Oh, well, I brought a lady back, and, we had a good time, and she left here alive. All right, okay. Good for her. I'm glad for that, but sure. There was probably no woman that would have, he's not talking about a real person because... okay, moving on. The officer then asked if there was anyone in the house other than his mother, and he replied, just my mom. When officers asked if they could look around, he became hostile and verbally aggressive. He said what part of the house they wanted to look at. I haven't killed anybody. I haven't raped anyone. Let's get that straight. The officer replied with, believe it or not, being cooperative is always good. Worley responded, dude, if I were a psychopath, I would have had your gun and shot you all. The officer said, nah, I'm too quick for that. No, you're not. Trust me. Are you saying you've killed before and you know? I'm just saying, sir, that's not cool to say to me. Now, it could be one of two things. People could argue, I guess, that Worley just doesn't like police officers because he's not had a good relationship with them. I mean, stop trying to abduct people and it might work out really well for you. But also, he's a jerk. And he's not going to be very cooperative when he's very clearly guilty of something. And I can say that because, you'll find out. Worley did allow them to look through the home, but that's all he permitted. He knew she wasn't in the house, and they needed a warrant in order to search the entire property. He wasn't overly concerned. If anything, he was a bit arrogant and belligerent. They noticed that Worley also had fresh marks on his arms and bruises on his legs that could be a sign from a recent struggle. With his demeanor, fresh wounds, and strange admissions, police found probable cause to obtain a search warrant. Another witness in the area described seeing a passenger van driving at high speed through the area and provided a license plate to the authorities. The license plate was soon discovered to be registered to Worley. I know, you're all shocked. They saw a speeding van, they took down the license plate, and guess what? It belonged to Worley. Can't believe it. Just can't. Can't believe it. Upon searching the barn at Worley's property, authorities made shocking discoveries. There were a lot of weapons and ammunition. In the large horse barn, there was hidden dungeon-type space that was concealed behind bales of hay. There were fastened restraints on the walls. Restraints. This is the dungeon type, well, the concealment anyway. Authorities found rope, tape, handcuffs, video cameras, and film. In the room, there was also a makeshift green chest. In that chest, they found several pairs of women's underwear, one of which was a pink pair that had blood on it, women's clothing, bondage gear, and more restraints. There was a suspicious sheet of plywood with holes on it in the ground. When officers lifted the plywood, they found a chest. They found a chest-style freezer buried under the surface. On top of that freezer was a strap to prohibit it from opening. When they opened the freezer, they were hit with an overwhelming smell of bleach as if it were recently cleaned. I'm just saying, at least it was like empty and smelled like bleach. Just throwing that out there. There was carpet at the bottom of the freezer that was stained with blood. When questioned about the freezer, he claimed he used it to, quote, store marijuana. Okay. This dude is a really weird guy. Like, my little side note, because I'm trying to keep the facts here, but he's a really weird guy. Well, this is actually facts. When he was asked about the women's clothing, he called it girlfriend materials. Girlfriend materials. Okay. And told detectives that he would give them out when going out on dates, and that with women. First of all, if I went on a date with some rando I just met and he gifted me lace panties, I'd have immediately passed on such a gift and, like, quickly made my escape away from this dude. How many women are legitimately comfortable with this kind of gift or gesture? Honestly. Like, you go out on a date, some guy you're trying to get to know, you haven't really met him before, he takes you out and he gives you panties. Not funny. But, like, okay, sure. Sierra's DNA was found on a piece of duct tape and on an inflatable mattress, both found in the barn. Additionally, officers also found blood on Worley's motorcycle, as well as even more zip tie restraints, rope, 2 more sets of handcuffs, a ski mask in his truck. Recording devices were visible all over the property, and cell phone records concluded that Worley was at the scene of the abduction for nearly 2 hours during the time Sierra went missing. Based on the evidence found on the property and in his vehicles, Worley also seemed to have his own kits available if the opportunity presented itself. Yes, he had kits, abduction kits, in his vehicle. In his van and in his truck, he had abduction kits. So if the opportunity presented itself, he had stuff readily available to abduct women. That's nice. On July 22nd, 2016, 3 days after Sierra's disappearance, police officially interviewed Worley. They were convinced he either had Sierra or knew where she was. Worley argued that kidnapping, abduction, and transporting a body was not something that would be possible on a motorcycle, so there's no way he was responsible for such a crime. Immediately after these comments were made and his interview concluded, Worley was arrested on charges of abduction. A spokesperson for the sheriff's office suggested that Worley fit the profile of a serial offender and that he could potentially have additional unknown victims based on what was found on the property, his previous legal issues, and own admissions. These victims could have been possibly kept at the property. Despite an exhaustive search, though, neither Sierra nor any human remains were found there. Okay, I have to breathe for a second because this is going to get hard. So why else would we be here if it wasn't going to get hard? Later the same day of Worley's arrest, there was a heartbreaking development. Sierra's body was recovered in a shallow grave in one of the fields along County Road 7 in Delta, about 3 miles southwest of Worley's Metamora home, 1 road away from where she parted ways with Josh. Sierra had been hogtied. Her wrists were handcuffed and bound to her duct-taped ankles by rope behind her back. There were no outward signs of sexual trauma, but she had a large cone-shaped dog toy in her mouth with a hole in it inserted as a gag and tied with rope that fastened to the back of her head. The gag was inserted into her mouth with such force it broke a tooth. She was only wearing an adult diaper and her bra. Sorry. Her autopsy confirmed that no sexual trauma had occurred, but the medical examiner did determine that the cause of death was asphyxiation, likely caused by the gag. According to the ME, it would have taken several minutes for her to suffocate, which would have been an excruciating process. The time of death was not able to be determined, but the official time of death was 9 p.m. on July 22nd, 2016, when she was declared dead by medical professionals. At this time, Worley's charges increased to aggravated murder and felonious assault. In the hole was Sierra wore gloves, and very close to where she was buried, there was also a pile of human feces. So not only did he do horrific things to this poor sweet girl, but he literally left a final disgusting insult behind after burying her. On August 16th, 2016, Worley was indicted on 19 counts. He was jailed without bail. The charges included aggravated murder, kidnapping, felonious assault, abduction, tampering with evidence, possession of criminal tools, possessing and carrying a firearm on disability that prohibited from legally owning such weapons, and abuse of corpse. At his arraignment, he entered the plea of not guilty on all charges because of course he did. Prosecutors were seeking capital punishment for the aggravated murder charge. After 2 delays in September 2017 and January 2018 and hundreds of potential jurors called, trial testimony began in March of 2018 at the Fulton County Common Pleas Court in Wauseon, Ohio, with Honorable Judge Jeffrey Robinson presiding. One of Worley's primary complaints was that he felt he was never going to receive a fair trial. Too many people had already decided he was guilty, and no one was going to keep an open mind to listen to his defense in their extremely small community, especially when the victim was so young and viewed as a star in the community compared to an old man who could barely hold a job and was never considered a pillar of that same community among his peers. Prosecutor Scott Hasselman was armed with enough evidence proving Worley's questionable character. He alleged that Worley had watched pornography that same day up until the crime was committed, as evidenced by his web browsing history. He also believes that Worley monitored Sierra's habits, which included riding her bicycle, and waited for the right opportunity to snatch her. Also, according to that web browsing history, on June 24th at 5:03 a.m., 1 month prior to her kidnapping, Worley used his computer to search the words hogtied and teen. The computer username was Jim, so there was no question for the lead detective to believe the account belonged to anyone other than Worley himself. Like, who's it going to belong to? His mother? Because that's the only person he lived with. Like, come on. Among the searches and films, words like rape, forced, hitchhiker, stranded, helpless, and gagged were also used. All of these keywords could be related to Sierra's murder. Their belief was that he ambushed Sierra after encountering her on County Road 6, much like he did Robin Gardner. After running her off the road, he then chased her through the cornfield or ambushed her after passing her. It was then that Worley struck Sierra in the head with his motorcycle helmet, which possibly knocked her unconscious. This is when they believe that her DNA transferred onto the helmet. Then Worley sat with her, waiting in the cornfield until it was dark. If she was conscious, it is probable that he threatened her with a screwdriver, similarly to what he did to Robin. During this time, he called his brother to tell him his motorcycle had broken down, but prosecutors alleged he was next to Sierra in the cornfield when he placed the call. He then rode his motorcycle back home, drove his van back to the crime scene, and this is when a witness saw him speeding. It was then that he transported her back to his barn of horrors. It was in his barn where he left some of her blood-stained clothes and physically assaulted Sierra before she was hogtied and gagged with a plastic toy. At some point, she asphyxiated from the gag, which prosecutors alleged Worley intended, as it was inserted with enough force to break a tooth. It is believed that all of the clothing removal and binding was done at the barn, and that her asphyxiation possibly may have happened when Worley did not intend for it to do so. Worley's motorcycle also had Sierra's blood on it. The ski mask, zip ties, and mace were also discovered to have Sierra's blood on them. Both Sierra and Worley's DNA were found to be on duct tape as well. Prosecutors also informed the jury during the trial that in the secret dungeon room there were journals and maps of the area along with a nanny cam. When things went awry sooner than he anticipated, it is believed that Worley then transported Sierra's body to the cornfield close to his property, which he buried approximately 2 feet deep. Worley vehemently denies ever having contact with Sierra. His defense argued that the evidence obtained from the barn, including the women's underwear, women's clothing, handcuffs, and other BDSM-related items and objects, were purchased from China via the internet for girlfriend material. Later, he changed his story, stating that the items were part of a porno studio that he intended to start. When he was questioned who his stars were, he stated that he planned to recruit women via Craigslist. Okay. Worley also claimed that he had left behind his helmet and other evidence when his motorcycle had broken down alongside of the road. It was merely a coincidence that it was near where her bicycle was found. The defense also argued that there was low concentration of Worley's DNA on the helmet, and that it must have been someone else who used the helmet to assault Sierra. A witness described seeing a man in red shorts in the field, but no red shorts were found when Worley's property was searched, so the man, quote, could not have been him. Worley's trial of accusations and possible involvement did not even start with Robin. While he has never been formally charged or even questioned for the crime, the sister of Lori Ann Hill from Swanton, Ohio, feels that Worley is the man who killed her sister after a Halloween party in 1985. And that is why you saw this photo. Lori Ann Hill. It was 1985 on October 25th, and Lori was going to a football game and to an after-Halloween party. She did not return home. My mom started making phone calls, and my father and I started driving. I began to panic after going to the house where the party was, and nobody has seen Lori there. I remembered calling different radio stations. Lori, if you can hear us, call us. An older lady had seen her on Hallett Road overpass, which would have been heading towards our home. We continued to look for her Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and on Tuesday, I heard my mom. She said, "Oh my God, your dad's going to have a heart attack." And he's kind of half leaning against Chief Bates' police car, and I don't think he had to say anything. But he walked in, and my mom started to cry. And he looked at me, and he looked at my mom, and he said, "She's gone." And my mom started screaming. To do what he did to a 14-year-old girl, he's an animal, said Roger Hill. Rachel, who is Lori's sister, believes it was Worley who killed her sister after she saw him at his first arraignment in Fulton County in 2016. She said there was an evil that oozed out of him, and he had blood-stained hands. Rachel noted the fact that he wrote with his left hand. Rachel said she was told years ago that her sister's killer was left-handed. Rachel talks about what she finds as similarities between her sister and Sierra's deaths. There were marks of bondage on my sister. She had markings on her neck. She was walking. She was alone, tall, healthy, beautiful young girl. Lori's body was found the same amount of feet approximately from the road as Sierra's. The brutality in which he tortured them. Lori was found completely naked, and James would have been 26 years old at the time. More about the 2018 trial. Among those testifying at the trial was the brave Robin Gardner, who relived her near-death encounter with Worley in 1990. The two cases felt eerily similar. Lucas County Coroner Dr. Cynthia Beiser performed the autopsy on Sierra. Go to trial photos. There's bondage gear. There's this asshole. She testified that Joughin was 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 122 pounds at the time of her death. She also testified in court that Sierra had sustained a cut on her forehead and contusions on her legs, in addition to a hairline fracture at the back of her skull. The upper left incisor was the tooth that had been broken when the dog toy was forced inside of her mouth and bound around the back of her neck. The toy was yellow, oval-shaped, and plastic. It was 2 inches wide and 3 inches long. Due to the sheer size of the toy, Sierra's brain was deprived of oxygen. Not depraved. Which caused her to suffocate. Dr. Beiser reiterated to the jury that it could have taken up to 10 minutes for her to pass away, but before she expired, there would have been visible or audible signs of Sierra's distress while she struggled to breathe, something Worley likely watched occur. Dr. Beiser also testified that it was absolutely possible that the hairline fracture at the back of Sierra's head could have been the result of being struck in the head by a motorcycle helmet. The blood on the pink pair of underwear that was tested, and DNA confirmed that they had belonged to Sierra, as did the blood on the roll of paper towels that were found, and blood tested from the air mattress that was found in Worley's barn. A key found on Worley's keychain matched the handcuffs around Sierra's wrist. So I learned something about handcuffs. Police issued handcuffs all have a very similar or the same key. Off-brand handcuffs do not match those. So like when Robin was abducted or the abduction attempt, they could not get the handcuff off of her wrist because their key didn't fit. But it fit Worley's key. In this case, they couldn't get the handcuff off of Sierra's wrist, but they were able to with the key found on Worley's keychain. Cell phone data also provided evidence that Sierra's phone pinged in the same location as Worley's on 2 occasions before he either shut it off or the battery died. The Evergreen schools are close to where Sierra went missing, and the security cameras from the school captured a motorcycle traveling in the area at that time. It was hard to see who was on that motorcycle, but it was concluded that it was not Josh. A vehicle resembling Worley's truck was seen going back to that same area much later that same day. It was also presented to the jury that his semen was found on a blanket recovered with the air mattress. While it was not evident that she had signs of sexual trauma, it could not be completely ruled out either. Defense lawyer Merle Ardak maintains that there was no evidence submitted at trial that Worley purposefully suffocated Sierra. He argues that the jury could not infer his purpose on this case because 1. Sierra's death was not caused by a gunshot or knife wound, which can we talk about how incredibly ludicrous that is? Like, the only way a person can be killed is by stabbing or shooting. You're a lawyer, and that's your best defense that you could come up with. She wasn't shot, she wasn't stabbed, so it couldn't have been my guy. Sure, like, that's not the only way a person can be murdered. 2, the state failed to prove the exact time of death. So because they couldn't say if it was that day, the day before that when Sierra died, that's an argument for why it couldn't have been his client. 3, the state's main argument on the purposefulness focused on Sierra's broken front tooth. So because her tooth was broken, it was obvious that he forced a toy in her mouth with enough purpose to cause injury. Well, it wasn't consensual. She wasn't like, yes, please shove this humongous dog toy in my mouth and break my teeth. Like, it wasn't a consensual act. So try harder, my guy. The defense continued with the idea that Worley never even saw Sierra on July 19th, and that his belongings were left in the cornfield when his motorcycle broke down, and that's why the fuse box was found. As stated previously, no red shorts were found on the property despite a thorough search, and it was Deck's belief that the arrest was improper and he was framed. James Worley was framed, you guys. He was framed. He didn't do it. He was not the third gunman on the grassy knoll. It was someone else in red shorts, maybe Richard Simmons. Definitely wasn't this guy, though. Deck also clarified with the jury via testimony that the time of death was declared at the time Sarah's body was found at 9 p.m. on July 22nd, but they had no true time of death that could be determined. There was no reasonable degree or medical scientific certainty when the death actually occurred. They also argued that it was impossible for him to dig the hole she was found in alone. So bro can't dig his own hole? Is that what he's trying to say? Because I'm pretty sure, looking at the guy, that he probably could dig a hole just fine in loose soil. Also, they couldn't determine when exactly she died. Well, remember, he had just bleached that freezer. I'll pull that freezer back up that they pulled out of the ground. Isn't it reasonable that if he kept her under the ground, which is going to be cooler than not under the ground, than standing up on a floor level, so if he put her in this thing, isn't it reasonable that she would have been pretty much looking the same as she would have if it was the same day? I mean, it wasn't on. Obviously, there was no electricity going to it, but I don't think it's too far of a reach to not be able to tell when she died. It doesn't seem unreasonable to me. A doctor evaluated James at the request of the defense attorney to help paint a picture of a mentally unstable man with a hard life. The doctor testified that he diagnosed him with antisocial personality disorder, marijuana dependence, depression, paranoia, and narcissistic personality disorder. Of course he's a narcissist. Are we surprised? Really? Really? And by the way, people have these same diagnosis and they aren't out killing people. People have all kinds of hard lives and they're not out committing abductions and murders. Like, I know it's a defense attorney's job to poke holes in prosecution stories and poke holes in their claims, but that's really weak at best. Deck went on to say, oh, this is the best. I gotta pull this one up. This is amazing. Amazing. Because you're going to look at this space, this room, right here, this room. The makeshift room in the barn wasn't a dungeon. It was merely a barn room with handcuffs mounted to the walls. That's normal. I know everybody has big barns in their property that, you know, usually people store bales of hay in, but no, he just randomly has shackles mounted to the wall. The room was intended to be used as a studio and nothing more. The reason pornography was found on the home computer was due to his plans to establish a new business. A longtime friend of Worley, Lawrence Kreis, described them as occasionally getting high on marijuana and watching bondage porn together, sometimes while his mother was in her room napping. That's disgusting. Kreis also testified that Worley showed him lingerie and bondage materials, including a ball gag and leather mask. When asked if Worley told him what he was going to use the items for, Kreis said that the defendant mentioned possibly using it for women met online dating sites, wanting to tear the lingerie instead of their clothing. Kreis alleged Worley also meant to start a porn business. Because, you know, that's endearing and everything. So, you know, when I don't really watch porn. I don't think I've ever really watched porn, so I don't know. I'm not an expert here. But I'm pretty sure that unless it's not like the horror film kind, like, Silent Hill or The Hills Have Eyes or one of those Hill movies, Wrong Turn, where you might come across some, cannibals that have been inbred for several generations. Unless you're into that kind of porn, I can't believe that this would be, the ideal filming location. A rancid, rundown, beat as hell barn that has probably existed since the 1950s. Actually, probably way beyond that. So, for this to be a studio location with the best lighting ever, obviously, because, it's just so well lit in this space, would be the most ideal location to start a porn film, series. Sure. I guess. After 6 hours of deliberation and a 2-week trial, the jury unanimously found James C. Worley freaking guilty. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. A sentencing hearing was scheduled to determine if Worley would get life in prison without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. Worley spoke for about 45 minutes during the hearing for his sentence. He directed most of his speech towards Sierra's grieving family. In his remarks and comments to them, he described her as a beautiful girl and that everyone had been deeply affected by her passing. He made his statement seated next to his attorney. In this statement, he also said that he was instructed to say nothing since the onset of this thing and to remain silent. It was good advice. The less you say, the better you are. He said, "First and foremost, I want to say that myself and my family, everyone that I know, is heartbroken for the Joughin family. Make no mistake. Now, the person who used my home," and this is when Worley says something that sends me into an internal rage. His next words are not very audible, but his new claim is that Sierra was on his property, in his barn, in his, quote, studio, but someone else, not him, put her there. There was DNA under her fingernails that did not belong to Worley. He continues to maintain that the 2 to 3 days he had Sierra, I believe he had her drugged, literally subdued, and kept her control. Don't ask me why she wasn't raped. She was a beautiful girl. Bro, what? I will read that statement again. The 2 or 3 days he had Sierra, meaning some stranger, not himself, the person who set him up, the person who was framing him, had Sierra drugged, literally subdued, and kept her controlled. Don't ask me why she wasn't raped. She was a beautiful girl, and he was set up. Judge Robinson chose to grant James Worley a death penalty sentence. He noted to Worley, the defense, the prosecution, the jury, and those in the courtroom, including Sierra's family and friends, that if he had believed there was a slight, even remote chance Worley was innocent, he would have given him a life sentence instead. Now, this is what kind of sucks. His death date is scheduled for May 20th, 2025, which is what kind of prompted this whole thing. I've been thinking about Sierra a lot lately, as he's supposed to be executed. And by supposed to, I mean again, because there's already been 2 different times when he was supposed to be executed, and because of these stupid appeals that he has, he's asking for a new trial because of course he is. Why wouldn't he? It was supposed to be June 3rd, 2019, but the date has since changed twice, and now it's May 20th, so next month. But I think Governor Mike DeWine has stopped all executions until they can agree on something other than lethal injection. I know a lot of states are bringing back the firing squad, which isn't as fun as that sounds. I know that sounds really terrible, and I'm a bad person for saying that. But, for me, put him in an open field and have like 50 people shoot off rounds at him. I know that sounds gory, but okay. So I'm hoping that they can come to an agreement by May 20th and they stop letting this Joker use appeals and just execute him already, because he has not shown any kind of remorse. He's never admitted to what he did. He's a narcissist, and a doctor that was paid for by his defense team diagnosed him as a narcissist with personality disorder. So he's never going to rehabilitate. He's never going to feel sorry for what he did, because he actually sat in an interview with a news reporter and said that his appeals will long outlive him and he will die a natural death and not by execution. Like, he boasts about it. He knows that the state of Ohio and the laws set in place protect him, and it's going to be a long time if he's ever executed. He knows this, and it's... Anyway, so I would love to say that he is going to get executed next month, but I'm skeptical. Since Sierra's passing, there have been multiple fundraisers for Justice for Sierra. It is for a violent offender registry and is important to help keep people safe. Sheila won a civil suit and the Worley property was granted to her. She chose to have the home and all of the buildings leveled, and since then there has been an effort via the FBI to search the property looking for other victims. The family was also awarded any funds Worley has the potential to collect if he were ever to be paid to participate in a book deal or interviews. And this is where I'm so glad, because with the Son of Sam laws being eradicated in most states, it goes against the free speech, the First Amendment, which I'm all for the First Amendment, and I'm all for people's right to freedom of speech. But I'm going to get political for a second here and say I think that's a load of crap, because if people commit violent, heinous crimes that take the life of another person, they should not be able to capitalize off those crimes. If they want to do interviews and have that free speech, awesome. They should not be compensated for it, because that's gross. But that's just my opinion. You can leave your opinion in the comments, but that's just my opinion. Sierra was less than 500 feet from her home, and it is so unfair that her beautiful life ended so tragically. And when I say 500 feet from her home, she was almost there when he ran her over. Her bike was close to her home. So these are notes from me. I tried to stick mostly with facts, and these are still facts in here, but these are also my notes. As a member of the community, I wonder how often Worley was able to get himself removed from the requirements mandated by the court to seek counseling through a licensed psychologist. Clearly, based on the admissions of Worley in the notes, he intended to strike again. As it was, he was released a year under his minimum prison sentence. Had he been in continued therapy, he might have slipped up on his crimes. Since he couldn't be formally charged for Claudia's disappearance, nothing could be required by the courts for that disappearance. As a member of that community, it also makes me question how many missing persons in the area have also fallen victim to Worley. How many women have been listed as runaways, but instead met their untimely death in his clutches? His sexual deviance and repeated offenses, coupled with evidence found in the barn at his family home, all could have been absolutely avoided. How does someone serve 1/3 of a prison sentence for such a gratuitous crime, be required to undergo temporary counseling, and then go absolutely free? This all sounds so astounding to me. It just seems ludicrous. The number of people incarcerated for life over simple marijuana possession and non-violent crimes without a victim. Meanwhile, he just walked because he petitioned the court. Is madness. He was literally a ticking time bomb, and it was only a matter of time before he snatched someone who would get him caught for good. Otherwise, I can't believe that for the 20 years after Claudia's disappearance, he just laid low and left everyone alone after there were at least 2 other victims. Well, potentially Lori. We don't know for sure that it was him, but it probably was. There were at least 8, according to images I have seen, carefully bagged and labeled articles of clothing. In my mind, I believe that each baggie belonged to a different victim. It's common for killers to keep trophies of their victims, and Worley told the therapist each abduction clearly indicated that there was more than one. I'm furious that this madman was so easily released from prison after bludgeoning a young woman with a hammer while attempting to abduct her after running her off the road. Nothing about any of this is okay. That first attempt, when he actually got caught, should have earned him a minimum of a 25-year sentence. Anything else, anything less, is an absolute insult. Furthermore, good behavior shouldn't be allowed for extremely violent crimes with a sentence less than 25 years. And good behavior should never let them walk until at least 3/4 of their sentence has been carried out. In my opinion, the incarcerated individual should spend every ounce of that time behind bars, and if they are released early, they should be under monitoring until their sentence has been fulfilled. There is no reason under the sun to justify a violent offender walking away like nothing happened other than a stain on a background check after 3 effing years. I lived in Swanton for a few years. The population fluctuates at around 3,500 people, and that includes those living in rural homes outside in the country. There are no truck stops near town, and semis rarely travel past the main roads because the side roads are too narrow. So chances are, if something happens, the perpetrator is a local individual. According to records, there were less than 950 students in the whole high school, and this includes students who are open enrolled from neighboring districts. Knowing that Worley had an apartment in the town of Swanton, within a short walking distance from where Lori was abducted, I am having a really hard time believing he didn't have anything to do with her murder. Back then, there was only one set of apartments for lower incomes, and they are within a few streets from the former high school, which is now the middle school, which is about an 8-minute walk from where Lori was found and less than a minute by car. As I am watching, listening, and reading all of the things surrounding this case, I can't help but think about how easily this could have been me. I played soccer in White House, close to where Robin was nearly abducted, after his release from prison. Several times I rode my bike or walked home to and from games and practices because I only lived a few miles away. I was always alone. That's absolutely terrifying to me. And he was the last person to be seen with Claudia. That was in the 90s. Then there's Worley's super odd behavior that would send off a million alarms in my head. Worley answers the door. Hello, I don't have any relationships with actual women, nor did I kidnap, rape, or kill anyone. What can I do for you today? Officers, there's a young lady missing. Worley, I'm not out there murdering chicks. Sorry, bro. Come back later. This dude was a walking, living, breathing reminder that there is very little hope for sexual predators ever being completely rehabilitated. He is a perfect example of why it is a complete gamble to allow them to ever leave prison. Metamora had a population of 617 people in 2016. When we're talking about a very small community, I'm not kidding. The school district is so small that all 3 levels of education, elementary, middle school, and high school, almost share the same parking lot. There are 1,134 students total, including those open enrolled from other districts. So for Worley to claim that someone just happened to find Sierra riding her bicycle and just happened to pick his barn that he was always at seems ridiculous. How could he be always home, yet blissfully unaware that someone was torturing her a few yards away? Other than Lori's murder in 1985, Worley is a suspected person of interest in other murders. In 1980, Bobby Lee Wells, 30, was found along County Road F in Swanton. Her body was beaten with a hammer. Worley's home is just a few miles away at County Road L and Road 6. Michelle Ann Huffman of Toledo, Ohio, was found murdered in the woods on February 17, 1981. Her death date was estimated February 2nd, 1981. She was 19 years old. Worley also worked close to where she was found. Sharon Ward was 17 when her nude body was found in a cornfield in Oregon, Ohio in 1982, close to where Worley was working. She was 19 years old. She had blunt force trauma to the head and had been stabbed. Karen Lee Coles, 32, went missing near Opening's Metro Park in White House, Ohio in 1982. She was never found. This is very close to where Robin Gardner escaped Worley. In December 1983, a 17-year-old Joanne Joughin was found in Delta, Ohio, which neighbors Metamora. Her nude body was left by a cornfield as well, in a ditch. She had been missing for 2 weeks and was last seen around Thanksgiving. Lori Ann Hill was 1985. Tabitha Ann Guth, 19 years old, of Toledo, went missing around August 20th when she was last seen by a friend. 1 month later, remains were found and later to be determined to be Tabitha's. She was only wearing sneakers. While there is not enough evidence to prove that Worley is responsible for these murders/disappearances, he does fit the profile of a serial killer. He's still trying to appeal his death sentence and is fighting for a new trial. In Ohio, to receive the death penalty as a recommendation from the jury, they all had to completely agree with the declaration. They must agree without argument, coercion, or compelled otherwise. This decision didn't come after days or weeks, but 6 hours. This tells me that they, like Judge Robinson, had zero doubt in their mind that he was guilty. It meant that the prosecution had a strong enough case with all the evidence they needed to not buy a shred of the story given by Worley or his defense. It's also upsetting and absolutely devastating to me that he was permitted to address Sierra's family. They didn't deserve to listen to him go on and on for such a long time. He didn't have the right to utter her name, compliment her, while gaslighting them and causing them emotional distress. Who cares if his family is heartbroken? He caused that pain. He caused them pain every time they had to look at him because he was sick and failed to get help. He knew what he wanted to do. He knew what he was capable of. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was well planned and thought out, quite unlike his attempt at abducting Robin Gardner. While she's lucky to have survived the ordeal, I can't imagine how she feels about all of this. How she feels living with her own trauma while knowing Sierra wasn't as, quote, lucky. I am so proud of her for testifying in Worley's trial. That could not have been easy. I also feel horribly for Josh. None of this is his fault, but I'm sure it haunts him even now, years later, that he didn't see her safely reach home. He has since become a paramedic, married a lovely woman named Shelby in 2021, and I believe they have one child so far. I hope that his family finds all of the happiness in the world and that he knows and understands that he is a good person worthy of peace. Josh has also founded a nonprofit organization called COGS, Keep Our Girls Safe, which offers free self-defense classes. They have helped over 2,500 women so far. I will have all the links in the bio of this video below. Finally, for Sierra's family and those who loved her most, I'm so sorry that her beautiful light was snuffed out in such a tragic way and has been stolen from you. I hope, beyond all hopes, that some good does come from her loss and that you can see every goal met that helps you heal and cope with losing such a wonderful person. And I wanted to conclude this video with a little field trip since I got all of that out. It's interesting because this changes, the lighting changes of this map. But this is the Worley barn. There is a box truck next to it. You'll see that it says in the corner. Nope, my picture's over it. This was October 2007 that this image was taken. So October 2007, you can see his barn and the property line. But the second you click up here, it changes. It's much brighter. And this is May 2024. That big barn is gone. The house is gone. And this barn remains, but I do think that has been since leveled as well. And there's like a chicken coop out back that may be still there, but the plan was to level all of the buildings, but especially the house and that barn. That was the barn of horrors. But so this is the Worley property. So here is the road. And see, when I see how it changed the color, the color pixelation, everything got different. That's the 2007. So this sign says 6 and L. County Road L and 6. She was found on County Road 7. Oops. Changed again. This is July 2009. There's a reason I'm going down here. So on one side, it looks like bean field and corn, which my dad used to farm, and he would do alternating too. One year would be beans, one year would be corn, and he said it helped with the pH balance of the soil, and that's how your vegetable tastes better, is if the pH balance is there and it's a more even, you know, just a little fun fact for you. Still going down this road. At some point, I might even pass Sierra's house. I don't know. Still here. There's a reason for this. Here's an intersection. This is 6 and what? M? Yep, that's County Road M. We're still on 6. I'm going to go to right here. Still field. Yeah, still field. Still County Road 6. N. Hey, look, a school bus. Whoa, that was weird. That was really weird. There's a reason for this, I promise. I'm getting there. Let's skip ahead to right here. Okay, what road is this? 6, is this S? Or is this 20A? This is 20. See, when they say miles, they're not kidding. Okay. So there's Route 20. This is Evergreen Elementary. I think it was the high school. So right here, I think, I could be wrong, but I think this is where Sierra and Josh said their goodbyes. It on County Road S. It could also have been the next road. But I don't think so, because she was pretty close to home. So it could even, it had to have been here, because, and I say it had to have been here because the schools picked up that motorcycle going towards his house, and his van was seen speeding that matched his license plate. So there's the elementary school. This is May 2023. They don't share the same parking lot, but they're pretty close. Like, this is not a very big community. And I believe the high school and the middle school are one building. There's the stadium for soccer. There's a track around the soccer field. They're the Vikings. The home of the Vikings. Evergreen High School. So this is where they had that camera that picked up his vehicle, and they saw the motorcycle, but concluded that it wasn't Josh. That he was correct with not going beyond this point with her. And I don't know if they saw anyone on a bicycle. I'm not sure. But this was This wasn't all flat land. Well, see, it's May. So probably shortly planted. They might not even have had corn this year. It might have been bean. Because you would see little sprouts if it were corn by May. I guess it depends on when in May, because you get all the rain and shine and stuff. So, but that's a little field trip I thought we would go on. Is this is the county road. There's Evergreen High School, home of the Vikings. And where the image of the person and the motorcycle whizzed past here. And that's when they decided that it was James Worley. So I guess we could go back to his property before I end this live feed. Long stretch of road. I don't know. I'm confused on that. On where she and Josh parted ways. But regardless, okay, that's a road. That's housing. Hey, look, a pickup truck. I'm sure this person really appreciates being on. Not that they'll ever see it. Okay, here we go. There it is. The empty. Well, it's not empty. There's still 2 buildings up. Okay, this is weird. I don't see that other little building. Oh, there it is. That's why it's small. I didn't look beyond. May 2024 still. But the big barn is gone and the house is gone. And, you know, I'm glad that they're going to go check out the property and that the FBI are going to do, you know, other checks. But from what it sounds like, he ditched bodies. That's the only thing. I mean, the only thing I suppose I will say that he was somewhat smart about was he ditched bodies. He didn't keep them on his property. He didn't bury them there. He relocated. Like Lori was found. Well, he wasn't living here then. He was living in Swanton. But Lori was found near Hallett. Well, Tinsley was never found, but who knows where he ditched her. I mean, I'm convinced that he is responsible for more than Sierah and more than Robin. And also, it makes me wonder how many people have been declared missing persons that have encountered this guy. He worked at carnivals, or excuse me, not carnivals, but he worked at county fairs and stuff. He had a lot of odd jobs. He was in and around the Toledo area a lot. He was in the area of Oregon, Ohio a lot. He was all over the place. So I can't help but wonder how many missing persons, because we have this long list of people in 80s and then he gets arrested and goes to jail for robbing, and then Claudia goes missing. I just can't imagine that he didn't do anything in those years before Sierra. I mean, the guy was a deviant. He was looking up gross things on the computer. He, you know, he had gear that, even if he says, oh, it was for girlfriend material, whatever the hell that means. It's just, I really hope that her family gets the closure. Like, they've already gotten justice for Sierra in the sense that someone has been held accountable for her crime. Somebody has been held accountable for her abduction and her murder. You know, someone had, you know, they've gotten that kind of justice for her. But I want them to have complete closure. I want them to be able to go to sleep at night knowing that her killer can never hurt anyone ever again because he's no longer breathing. And just with this final hashtag justice for Sierra, check out COGS, keeping our girls safe, and maybe seeing what you can do to get them in your area as well.